Welcome to another episode from the Watch Advocate. Guys, today I have a really fun one for you. I know it's been a while since I've been back on, and it has been a wild time. It is the busy season in my career, or at least the career path I'm in currently, and it has been wild. And it is so nice right now just to sit back, chill, gather my thoughts, and think about what's some of the watch information that I've learned over the past few weeks since I've been out from the podcast here, and what's going to be fun to chat about today. So before we get started, please like, subscribe. Subscribing really does help the channel. Feel free to check out the website, TheWatchAdvocate.com. Got some affiliate links on there. Got to let that be known. Click anything, buy anything off of there. It helps out the channel. All right, so now that all that's out of the way, what has been happening in the watch world? Well, dear goodness, a lot has been happening. You've been seeing basically the watch market kind of bubble, pop a little bit as the economy does what it normally does, and right now it's going down, and so is the bubble of some of those crazy watches. Rolex is starting to see a major hit, and they've also leaked the thought that they actually are cutting production, something that they've been doing that for 5 years. They haven't been using peak production. Shocker! Oh my gosh. No new news there whatsoever. Rolex is doing what it always does. But it's really, I've started to notice this year a big trend in anti-Rolex people. There will always be diehards. It will always be the most well-known brand. But what they've done with their really ramping down production on purpose has brought in competition. And not only has it brought in competition, it's brought in kind of this new era of people would rather be seen wearing something else than the brand that's generally pumping out 1 million watches a year. So that's kind of an interesting side effect to what's actually been happening. Okay, so I guess the news is kind of interesting. I've been seeing the market change. My own personal taste have changed. There's still, I do want the Rolex Explorer too, and in a white dial. Without a doubt, I love the newer version of that. I think it's a great watch. I think it is definitely overpriced for what it is, and that's why I'm not going to pull the trigger on it anytime soon. But I've also seen the price for that go down about $4,000 in the last couple weeks. That's a big drop. That's a huge drop. So they're seeing some really big cutbacks. And, that does make me pique my interest a little bit more. But, no, I've noticed my own personal taste have started to shift a little bit. And I've seen it in the workplace, in meetings, and especially in the workplace. And I think for me, I've started to really tone down my watches in size. I've always been a big diver guy. I love the big dive watches. I've always kind of thought they're really cool when it comes to work. If I were trying to not be too crazy, I'll just wear a micro brand diver. Some of them are a little oversized, like an ocean crawler. I love my ocean crawler. It's like a 44 millimeter, 50 lug to lug. It's a pretty big beast, 14 tall or 14 thick, however you want to kind of call that. It's a big watch. I wear that quite a bit. I also wear a big G-Shock every now and then. I love the metal G-Shock, the all metal. Oh my goodness, such a beautiful watch. But what I kind of do there in my own personal thought is not wear something that's so overly expensive and blingy that it's kind of just like showy. And maybe I just need to, I've kind of noticed I just need to honestly change my own thought process on that. I think me trying to not be showy has actually been more showy than what I imagined. And that's just because the watches that I do enjoy in that area are big. They are showy. They are letting people know, hey, I've got this on my wrist. Check it out. Not the intention I ever meant to have, but I'm starting to notice that that's sort of what it does. And that's not what I'm going for whatsoever. They're not super expensive. But the thing is, most people don't know that. So the whole point of me not wearing expensive watches has really kind of backfired on me. And they're just more noticeable. And people think they're more pricey than they are. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. And I think that's kind of funny how just, I guess, where the climate is where I'm at in my profession. And that's something I've seen. And I feel like I need to tone it down. So I'm going to tone it down. I'm going to start going more stainless steel sports watches that are 40 millimeter or down. Well, maybe 41 and down. That's kind of my thought process now. Is not going too big. I do like a bit of flash because I love really in-depth dials. I really do. I mean, I love the Omega Seamaster white dial. It's so there's just so much depth to it. The zirconium on there is incredible in different lights. So that's just kind of a trend I'm going to start to take and see if that does have the desired outcome that I'm looking for. Maybe looking a little more normal, of course, to the size watch that I normally wear, or I should be wearing for I guess, the profession that I'm in. So interesting switch for me. We'll see how that goes, going smaller. And along those lines, I'm going to jump into the topic that I was really interested in. And that is where Grand Seiko has been going. I have really pushed off Grand Seiko for a long time. And the more that I've kind of done research and jumped into it, I'm starting to see they're getting a bigger hold in the market. And it's not just because I got interested in them and read a lot more. I'm starting to see that they are trending pretty big on YouTube, on watch forums, on all these crazy things. They're really moving up in the world. And I checked them out at a boutique. And my first initial thoughts are these are way too flashy. They're way too bright. They're way too blingy. And I'm not the biggest fan of them. Soratsu polishing is not new to me. That's something I actually knew about in the knife world, believe it or not. There's a brand out there that specializes in that. And they do that polishing on blades. And it is beyond gorgeous. So much so that when I had one in hand, it annoyed me because of how fingerprinty it looked. You couldn't touch it without it looking off because there was a fingerprint on it. That it was almost, in my opinion, it was an aesthetic issue, an error, because it was so shiny, so reflective and mirror polished. Perfection kind of backfired there. So that's kind of the thought process that I'd always had going into Grand Seiko for years, is that it's just too polishy, it's too shiny, too blingy. Now, the more research I've done on the spring drive and on their quartz watches, I just realized they are honestly crushing the competition when it comes to quality and value. And that has been the biggest surprise. Yeah, they're from Japan, but most Swiss watches aren't really from Switzerland. If you didn't know, they're just assembled there. And the most expensive part now has to be made in Switzerland. And that's usually a movement. Believe it or not, most of these brands are importing all their watch parts into Switzerland, and most of them they're from China. Believe it or not, most major brands. I would say the only one that probably isn't that I really know of is Rolex, because they do everything in house. And Seiko does everything in house for the most part in Japan, Grand Seiko specifically. So I think that's interesting. Swiss watches aren't technically Swiss watches completely. They don't have to be anyway. There's actually one brand that almost all completely is Swiss, and they actually don't put that on the dial because they think it's a joke that Swiss watches is on the dial, and it's not really truly made in Switzerland. So I just thought that was kind of interesting, and interesting comparison to see Grand Seiko has just moved up in my mind for the best value for $5,000 to $10,000. You're really getting hand-finished dials, hand-finished work where you wouldn't see that for $20K plus, and you can get it on a $5,000 watch. Heck, you can get it on a $2,000 watch, and that's just insane. Now, what I will say is, for bang for buck, they beat out everyone. They crush Rolex. They crush Omega as far as bang for buck on quality of finishing. No doubt. Now, the movements, I'd say, Omega might be the best as far as like bang for buck for what you're getting in that area. But Seiko might be a little better. You put the spring drive up against one of those new coaxials from Omega, and honestly, I'm kind of leaning towards the spring drive these days. And their quartz is really cool. They have like power torque quartzes. They're 10 seconds off for an entire year, and man, they never miss on when they're hitting their markers on the dial. They're just darn impressive. So I might break down and get into some specific watches. I'm really, really loving their kind of lower end quartz for an everyday, and then I love the Snowflake dial. Obviously, they're classic, and they've got a ton more versions now, but they're just so good for the money. It's really hard for me to look away now, even though they can be a little shiny and bright depending on which one you pick. They are just a new player since Rolex has kind of put a lot of people off, and that's what I'm seeing. People are ticked. They want something new. They want bang for buck, and Grand Seiko is really coming at them hard. So that's really all I have for today. That was my thoughts over the last few weeks. I'm going smaller on watches. I'm interested in Grand Seiko beyond all now, and daggone, Rolex is starting to, just tick people off. Now, their market share has not lowered. Have no fear. But their production may lower, and you're going to see more of the same. And although prices may start crashing even more, even though they're cutting production, this market is going to be doing some interesting things. Now, not giving financial advice in any way, shape, or form. Go see your own financial advisor for that sort of thing. That is not me. So I hope you enjoyed the show. I know I had a blast. It's great just to sit back and talk about watches, talk about life, talk about business a little bit. So there it is. I hope everyone has a fantastic into their October here. Halloween is tomorrow by the date I'm recording this. So, stay safe, have a good time, and I'll catch you on the next one.